If you're a woman, you should play. If you consider yourself a woman and you want to play sports or vice versa, you should be able to play. That's my opinion.
So that was Dawn Staley, the head coach of the national champion University of South Carolina women's basketball team yesterday, saying that biologically born men should be allowed to play in women's sports if they believe they're a woman. She said that before they won the national championship.
That is such bizarre comments, and it got a little bit of attention before the game, but obviously we had to see who would come out on top. She won. Now it's getting a lot more attention. And joining us now for a reaction is Newsmax contributor Chrissy Clark and publicist and political analyst Whitley Yates. Great to have you both on. Happy Monday. So, Chrissy, the women's NCAA tournament this year was historic for one huge overriding reason. It grew the sport in ways we've never seen before with women's basketball. One game drawing over 12 million viewers. Those are NFL football numbers. And now the head coach of the new national champions wants men to play with the girls as soon as possible. What do you make of that? Does that make any sense to you?
No. And the reason why it really doesn't make sense to me is because I know that Dawn Staley doesn't have a problem taking hard stances. I don't know if you guys remember that at BYU there was an incident where a volleyball player on the BYU team allegedly said the N-word, and without investigation, without without real proof that happened, South Carolina women's athletic directors, such as Dawn Staley, said, no, I will not be playing against BYU athletics. And they took a hard stand against this, as they should if this actually happened. But it turned out that it was a complete lie. They went back, they looked at the videotape. That never happened. The N-word was never dropped by any player on a BYU or volleyball team. And yet she had no problem taking a stance against something that she viewed as morally wrong. So we know that she doesn't have a problem doing this. So I think it's even more problematic. It would be one thing if she didn't want to wade into the political sphere, but we know she has no problem doing that. So she genuinely believes this, which is arguably more scary when you put it in that context.
Yeah, and Whitley, so it's one thing. She has the better team. She has the best team in the country. She has the biggest players in the country. I just wonder how she would feel if the script was flipped and now she's up against biological men who we know are stronger, faster, and usually taller. And in the game of basketball, size matters.
You know, I think it's interesting because she was really pressed on this question right before the basketball game, and she tried to be elusive, and then they came back with a follow-up question. I really disagree with her stance on this. I don't believe that biological men should be playing in women's sports, and I'm disappointed that this is the headline after this hard-fought battle. I'm glad that she's not in the decision-making role to allow that to happen, and we have to just keep fighting for women's sports and women's rights.
Yeah, it's a huge setback. In the comments, I think are going to get a lot more attention now that South Carolina are national champions. I want to move on, Chrissy. So Facebook, Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, introducing made with artificial intelligence labels ahead of the 2024 election to prevent the misuse of AI technology with posts. Basically, they want to do this so people aren't confused by what they're seeing on Facebook and Instagram. Is this the right call? Can they get this right? Is Mark Zuckerberg capable of doing this right?
I find it very scary that they're only doing this in election years. I find this very frustrating about all the social media platforms, that they have special algorithms for election years, like the other 3 years in the election process of learning about candidates doesn't matter, and somehow we need to be extra careful with our information in the 2024 as opposed to 2023. I think it's stupid. I think I should have the same access to the information I had last year as I do this year. And with that being said, yes, of course, I actually do think that having some sort of label is somewhat important. I view myself as a very on top of the news person. Clearly, I do this for a living. And there have been times where I've been duped. I'm like, oh, that would have gotten me had there not been a label. So I get the point of it. I just don't understand why they do it only in specific years with no intent of actually applying it across the board in a even-handed manner.
So I want to move on here, Whitley. Another thing we've been talking a lot about this morning. So New York City agreeing to pay $17.5 million for making a Muslim woman remove her hijab during a mugshot photo. What do you make of this?
I mean, when I read it, I had to read it a couple of times. I don't think that they should have had her to remove it because it is based upon her religion, but having to pay that type of money for those types of decisions when someone is under arrest and in the custody, I don't know. I think it gets a little tricky. And I think that people will begin to try and utilize this to then sue law enforcement and jails into giving them large lump sums of money when they have indeed done something against our society and civilization to be penalized.
Chrissy, 15 seconds response. I think, look, if you're arrested and you got to get your mugshot, they are taking that picture so they can identify you down the road, and that others that weren't there during your booking can also identify you. Hijabs make that, it would be like me wearing a baseball hat or a cowboy hat or something like that. Might impair someone's ability to properly identify me. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I hear that argument, but what really bothered me about this is that this was one on free speech to have a hijab. Give me a break that New York City or New York gives a crap about free speech. Be so for real.
Yeah.
Good point. All right, Whitley Yates, Chrissy Clark, good to see you both on a Monday morning. Appreciate you being with us.